Mina Kimes, and this is in particular because you live out in Los Angeles. Mina Kimes went to Blue Sky. Let me call up the Mina Kimes. Yeah, she went to Blue Sky, the Democrat version of X or Twitter, and tweeted out this: the disparity between what's actually happening in Los Angeles and the way it's being mischaracterized is one of the biggest stress tests of modern media in recent memory. Botted socials, AI, old clips, declining literacy. It's like seeing a broken emergency response system hit by a storm. Mina is arguing, and isn't Mina based in Connecticut? I know sometimes she's out in LA, but I think she's out there in Bristol doing most of her shows. But she's saying we're being misled on what's transpiring in Los Angeles with these illegal immigrant riots and protests. I find this all comical because she was unconcerned when we went through 10 years of hey, police are just out randomly killing black men, and LeBron James saying, I can't even walk the streets without worrying about being killed by the police. Never uttered a complaint about that being mischaracterized and that not being a representation of reality. But she seems pretty sure we're being misled about what's going on in Los Angeles. From one Asian journalist to another, do you agree with her?
I must staunchly and severely disagree with my crouching tiger colleague, ESPN quarterback whisperer, and the campaign manager of one Karen Bass. She's not just a supporter, literally, Jason. She actually went on campaign events with Miss Bass, our fine mayor. Here's the issue, and I've said this on other shows, so I'm going to be completely as honest as possible. It's not like every single block in our fine city is on fire. You don't see protesters on every single red light. There's ways to avoid a lot of the disruption and the unrest. But keep this in mind. By her definition, then, 9/11 only affected a small block of Manhattan and the Pentagon. It's not like the whole U.S. was under fire, had jets and buildings burning down. January 6th, if you really think about it, it was for a few hours. What property damage was really done in comparison to what we're seeing right now? January 6th is still brought up by Democrats and liberals as this bastion of unrest, how it was an insurrection. Basically, I thought it was a bunch of people that overstepped their bounds and trespassed. They did. That's not denying, but to say there's an insurrection and to be held up as a symbol of what is anti-American, anti-patriot behavior, I find that interesting because, Jason, we're in day 6 of this in LA. Okay, and here's another thing. When you talk about proportionality, all right, when you say it's only, well, there are major cities, and you know which ones, Jason. They're all run by Democrats with female mayors, right, for the most part. They only have less than 1,000 homicides a year. But you know what, Jason? In civilized society, that's actually considered way too much. So again, I think the way she is framing this is incredibly dishonest.
Yeah, I haven't been in downtown Los Angeles in quite some time, but I used to live there in downtown in 2013 and 14, and maybe parts of 15. And I lived at the Apex building on 900 Figueroa. The whole LA Live thing was popping back then.
Staples.
ESPN's headquarters. Yeah, you could walk to the Staples Center. You could walk to ESPN's headquarters. The whole and I lived there and I loved it. I looked yesterday to just see, like, okay, what are people paying to live down there? And I lived at the Apex building. I lived on either the 29th or 30th floor. I can't remember. I lived next door to one of Alec Baldwin's either daughters or nieces. CeeLo Green lived in the building. Iggy Azalea lived in the building. Molly Karam lived in the building. I looked and saw that the rent for that penthouse I had seemed to be about $2,000 less to rent now than when I lived there in 2013 and 14. Maybe my memory's wrong, but it seemed to be $1,500 to $2,000 less. I've never seen anything depreciate in LA. And that to me says that downtown LA is a hot mess, and they're basically begging people to live downtown because it has been that overrun by crime and chaos. Am I wrong about this, or is downtown
Jason,
like a place to avoid?
Well, it's funny. I've never actually felt danger in LA, but then I consciously avoid certain areas. My size, I'm a lot bigger than the average Asian. It has something to do, and I'm a male, so it's a little bit different for me. But this is what I hate. Why, like when Anna Kasparian, you know who I'm talking about, she did not think crime was a problem until she got assaulted. This is a lack of self-awareness from those in the ivory tower. Until they are directly impacted, they don't think it's a problem, and that the peasants should just shut up and take it. This is what's going on with Mina Kimes. Now, are there parts of downtown LA that have always been kind of shady, bad, slummy? Yes. The only difference is right now they're kind of on fire. That wasn't happening as of like 7 days ago. But Jason, here's the other thing that I do notice, and this could be very anecdotal. As someone that has lived in LA his whole life, there used to be a point in time when I'd be driving around, visiting a boxing gym, or going wherever I need to. You would see homeless encampments or tents like on the side of the freeway, on the underpass, underneath the bridge, and you'd see it, and whatever. It is hard not to notice in the last 8 to 10 years how these tents have now mushroomed. Like they're on the sidewalks in Koreatown where they were not there before. I remember when I'd go to Wildcard Boxing Club, I'd be parking out on the street. It was not an issue. But people at Wildcard even told me a couple years ago, we don't even really want to be outside the gym at certain points in time when the sun goes down. So for people to say that it's this like idyllic setting, they're not being honest. But at the same time, is it exactly escape from LA outside the last 6 days? I wouldn't say that's true either.
I'll say this. When I left LA in 2020, and I'm living on the Wilshire corridor that connects Brentwood, I'm living in Westwood and Beverly Hills. And some of my final thoughts, and like, man, I got to get out of here, was that the homeless encampments were starting to invade Brentwood,
yes,
and Westwood.
Yes.
And you'd see, I'm like, the Wilshire corridor that drives through there, like, this is one of the richest zip codes in all of America. And there's homeless encampments kind of everywhere. And it's like, what are we doing? And so I want to play you one other clip. Dan Batard, who's an ally of Mina Kimes, and not that he was talking about Mina Kimes or whatever, but he had his little theory again that Trump and these guys are trying to whiten up America, and that's why they're trying to run illegal immigrants out. Let's play Dan Batard.
Again, is what is happening in California, what is happening in Los Angeles. Never mind the optics of it. The optics of it are horrifying enough. The reality of what is happening there with peaceful protests and what feels like state militia being rubber bulleting about just basic American freedoms because we are now going for whiter nation. Look, Dominique, we talk about, David Sampson talks about he's not a fearful person and then gives us a litany of fears. I don't think I betray a confidence when I say that Dominique is extending his trip in South Florida a couple days longer than he would like, because what is happening in Washington right now feels like it's not a welcoming place for him this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of traffic. I ain't messing with it.
What's happening in Washington this weekend? And your thoughts?
So basically, I mean, are they trying to make a reference to, now we're trying to go back to sundown towns? Here's the reality. For all people, especially people of color like Dominic, you are safer around white people than people that look like you. I will leave it at that. The statistics do not lie. You would much rather be in a largely white community, I mean, maybe even lily white, than the supposed communities that you are trying to protect. Come on, let's just be honest about this. And peaceful protests. This goes back to the BLM riots, and let's call that what they were. When these gatherings and these events, when they amount, and you have this big receipt of billions of dollars worth of property damage and businesses lost, they are anything but peaceful.
I want to the Dominique Foxworth tape. I think he's saying he lives in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is one of the blackest areas in America, perhaps only rivaled by Atlanta, but I think it's actually, on a percentage basis, probably blacker than Atlanta. And so he's staying in Miami because, again, he's fearful, doesn't want to deal with the traffic, doesn't want to. It's a black-run city, dominated, probably 92, 93, 94% of the people there are black. What are we talking about, Dominic? What are we really, and this is where, again, I don't want to be disrespectful. I want to be respectful of the friendship that I used to have with Dan Le Batard. But Dan used to have the really uncomfortable conversations and really be a person that, you know, wasn't afraid to talk about things other people were uncomfortable talking about. Dominique Foxworth, I'm afraid to go back to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to stay down here in Miami, where there are far less people, black people per capita in Miami than Washington, D.C. I would have to ask that, what are you talking about? Who are you afraid of, Dominique, that you can't go back to Washington, D.C.? If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a moment of Fearless.